6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. It is Hot Mike Hunting with Rope here at Outkick.com. Chad, how many deep talks do you think we have per day?
Usually one. I would give us some credit and say that we get into a deep conversation at some point. Deep talks with Hutton and Withrow, at least once a day.
There's Deep Talks, the podcast, which you told me about and through social media. Yeah,
not as deep as this deep talk that we're going to talk about with Paul Anleitner. He is the podcast host. The title of the podcast, Deep Talks. He is a cultural expert, and you can find him on X at Paul Anleitner. That's where we found him, and Paul is on with us right now. Paul, I was blown away by your, I guess it's a thesis statement, whatever you want to call it, a multi-thread post about Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick and the cultural shift in America when that happened. And I've been following you ever since, and we're thrilled to get you here on the program. So thanks for hopping on with us.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Jonathan. It's great to be with you all.
So let's start with that. Top Gun Maverick as a cultural shift in America and what you saw with that when it took place and the phenomenon that it became both in the box office and then for people streaming at home.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that movie shouldn't have worked, right? So we're coming out of COVID. The theater feels like it's on the verge of collapse. And this isn't the kind of movie that you would expect to be successful, especially in light of maybe recent cultural trends where the more common move from Hollywood would be to take a hero from the past and to kind of deconstruct them to subvert your expectations. I think many of us felt that way when we saw Star Wars Episode 8, and I was, we were all looking forward to seeing our boyhood icon, Luke Skywalker, and then they turned him into this depressed hermit living on an island by himself. I went in fully expecting that sort of treatment for Tom Cruise's Maverick, and that is exactly the opposite thing that we got. And what was even more surprising to me was the reception culture-wide for how open people were and excited for something that celebrated aspiration. It celebrated the sort of try-hard attitude that has been part of Tom Cruise's MO since the 80s, but kind of fell out of fashion for a couple of decades. It was really surprising to see that. But in some ways, if you've been following cultural trends, you start to notice, hey, I think we've grown tired of this cynicism, the constant irony, the always subverting our fairy tales, subverting our stories that had these cultural heroes. And our culture's ready for something different. And that was just a breath of fresh air.
I think what was really cool about Top Gun Maverick is the villain we don't even know in the movie, right? It's all about our heroes. It's all about, as you put it, Paul, this try-hard mentality, this American excellence that we see in it. And it's just a vague, nationless, non-mentioned villain in the end that they're, bombing a site or whatever it may be. And then I think about Tom Cruise again in the latest Mission Impossible, and the villain is an actual algorithm, right? That's what the villain is. It's like the internet is the villain in the latest Mission Impossible movie. And I really think that could also tell a lot about this cultural shift that you're talking about and why those movies worked, even though they shouldn't, like you said, because it isn't this clearly defined hero and villain. There's a clearly defined hero, but the villain part of it's a little bit more vague.
Yeah, I think one way to think of this is maybe you go back and remember your high school days when maybe you went to high school where the football team or the basketball team had a state championship run. And the school spirit, right? We got spirit. Yes, we do. We got spirit. How about you? The school spirit was strong. I mean, you didn't even need to be on the football team or the basketball team to feel that positivity. Even it permeated whether you were in the pep band or you could have just been an English teacher. You felt it as a student or a teacher. And then let's say the next year when you graduated out all of those seniors and the team went 0-16, you felt that vibe shift in the school building. Culture works in that same exact way. And so I think in a lot of ways, we've kind of gone in kind of a cultural slump over the last couple of decades where the vibe, the spirit, if you will, has been cynical. We've been more apt to rail against the things we're against than be able to clearly name the things we're for, the values we're after, the good we want to pursue. And for whatever reason, Tom Cruise has kind of always been that guy. The way he celebrates even other movies, he's just always positive to the point in which, maybe even 5, 10 years ago, we would have looked at that as cringe. But I think the new thing that's happening as we're exhausted with kind of policing cringe, exhausted with our own cynicism, is to be like, man, I don't care about the cringe. Like, just give me something that is unashamedly someone giving their best. And I think that's even, I mean, you guys do sports talk most of the time. Those are the sorts of stories that inspire us, that we come and when we watch sports for, are those stories in which someone has given their all. It's aspirational, it's wholesome, and it stirs us in a positive direction.
Paul, how is it too simple to say that a big reason for this is it just got us back to the theater? It made us go to the theater to see this film?
Yeah, but then I think you have to ask the question, like, why did we want to go back to the theater, right? Like, what was it about this that made us go, yeah, I want to get back in the theater for it? It's not just the CGI, the special effects. Like, we have tons of that everywhere. It's the values, right? That's the thing that drives us back into the theater, is when we see a story that resonates with us and it does something to speak to our innate longing for meaning. And we all want to live meaningful lives. And so when a story does that, we go, yeah, sign me up. I'm going to go back to the theater over and over again for something that makes me feel that way.
How cyclical is the culture as you dive into it? Deep talk time. The administrations for president. We have deep talk chat. And I've talked about this from Lincoln. Then you end up with Woodrow Wilson. You end up with Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, Kennedy, Reagan. Cyclical, where it's like every fourth administration or something like that, where we seem to come back around to where we are. Can you dive in more into that and how we end up back where we were because we want that nostalgia and it pulls us back in?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you're talking about, like, philosophers would point even all the way back to someone like Hegel, who talked about this as a dialogue, a dialectical tension, right? So we're in conversation as a culture. We have these values that we celebrate. And then maybe after a generation, we start critiquing that, right? So I'm a 90s kid. I was born in 83. A lot of that stuff started to pivot towards the more cynical in the 90s. I even think about, like, my boyhood hero when I was super young, Hulk Hogan, and I was just so, like, attached to pro wrestling. And what did he stand for? He was, right, say your prayers, train hard, eat your vitamins, all of these values. And then what happens in the 90s, right? He dons an all-black NWO outfit, goes cynical. You might go, well, it's just pro wrestling. But you're like, no, pro wrestling's job is to be dialed into the culture. So we see that stuff. A pivotal movie for my generation was Fight Club, for men in particular, in 1999. And it was really, really cynical. And it was about deconstructing culture and feeling like you didn't fit in anywhere. So yeah, that stuff tends to be cyclical. We have a dialogue about it. And we go, yeah, maybe the Tom Cruise try hard thing was a little naive. Maybe we should be a little bit more like Tyler Durden. And then you do the Tyler Durden thing and you go, well, where did that lead me? And yeah, we come back around through these cycles of dialogue about this stuff.
There's always this generational argument that takes place about Michael Jordan or LeBron James, right? That typically the younger people will argue on behalf of LeBron James, older people argue on behalf of Michael Jordan. But it seems like NBC wants to capture the nostalgia of Michael Jordan in his era right now. And I know that you've posted about this as well. What does that tell you about what you think NBC is saying about what basketball fans and NBA fans want ultimately?
Yeah, you probably even noticed this last night. It really stood out to me watching the end of Game 7, seeing what felt like, from my vantage point, like pretty mild celebration by the Oklahoma City Thunder. And part of me wondered, even when I saw scenes of the locker room, and yeah, they're celebrating, but it didn't look like to me those Jordan days. And part of me wonders how much of that is these guys feeling the constant pressure of being critiqued all the time, and how much basketball media in particular is always comparing every generation to Michael Jordan, right? And saying, you're not good enough. And I wonder how much that weighs even on an athlete to feel like, yeah, I just reached the highest of the high. And what was the next talking point? Well, is SGA the next LeBron or Michael Jordan? And it was like, can't we just celebrate this guy for a moment? So I think an interesting move by NBC is to be like, what if we bring the archetypal icon that every basketball player is compared up against, and we actually brought him into the broadcast? And what I fully anticipate is a Michael Jordan that actually celebrates these athletes and their greatness, which might feel like, I don't know if Jordan's going to do that. But I've actually read some places, I don't know if these reports are true or not, that is the plan, that Jordan is being brought in to celebrate this generation. And I think that would be a breath of fresh air. I'm a huge basketball guy. And I would love people to celebrate the greatness of an SGA, or here in Minnesota, and Anthony Edwards, and to talk about these guys in the same way the 90s told us, hey, you want to be like Mike? Man, we've got an incredible talent pool in the NBA right now. Well, why don't we celebrate them? Why don't we do the Tom Cruise move, right? And be like, let's be tryhards. Let's celebrate something. Let's have high aspirations, and let's tell stories in a way that isn't cynical. It's not always about comparing the failures and the shortcomings of people, but celebrating the good that's right in front of us.
You know, we're all 90s kids here. Are we seeing the story retold from Jordan now with Caitlin Clark in the WNBA, and how we're jumping on board and everyone's following her to that path to greatness?
Yeah, and she's incredibly aspirational, right? I mean, she's an icon here. And I think one of the things it appears like she's even brushing up against is a sort of culture of cynicism that around her might try to downplay her greatness instead of celebrating it. I would imagine all of these players in the WNBA would look at her and go, you are totally changing the face of our sport in such a way that it's going to benefit all of us. A rising tide raises all boats, right? Why wouldn't we want your greatness? And I think maybe that's a cultural change as well. I'm hopeful that after this decades of living through cultural cynicism, we would start to realize, success isn't a zero-sum game. Like, I can celebrate the success of your show, gentlemen, in such a way without feeling like the work I do is threatened by it. It's not. If you're a success, and I happen to be joining with you guys momentarily, it's going to lead to my success and well-being too. So why won't I celebrate you guys instead of demeaning you? I hope we see that with Caitlin Clark. I'm optimistic that maybe there will be a tipping point where some epiphany is realized, like, now she's good for all of us, and that people will turn towards more of a culture of celebration, a culture of being like, she's aspirational, she's a model, an icon, and maybe that's something we can celebrate instead of critiquing.
Paul Anleitner, as the host of Deep Talks on the podcast there, is it weird being called a cultural expert when you first heard that?
Yeah, I know that is interesting. That's not something I've ever dubbed myself. I think that first came on a title that was given to me when I think I appeared on News Nation last year, and I was like, hey, sure, I'll take it. That's not necessarily what I call myself, but hey. I'm glad to be able to observe these cultural trends and help people think more deeply about them.
Yeah, man, you've been bestowed the
cultural
title.
Guru. We'll call you that. We'll take the expert out and put guru
even
in.
Better,
Is that
yes.
even better? Good, perfect.
I'll take it. Yeah, aspirational.
Yes.
Hey, man, thank you for the time. We enjoyed the conversation, and let's do it again soon.
I love it, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. There he is, Paul Anleitner. That's right up our alley.
That's a great talk. I feel energized now after hearing about how things may be shifting to a more aspirational tone.
I hear the round ball rock in my head right now after that conversation.
Yes. And I think he's spot on with a lot of the observations he's made about there's all these little tipping points along the way. The superhero movie franchise is a great example of, for so long it was, okay, here's the cynical look at the dark side of this superhero and everything they had to be taken apart to build back to do whatever. And now you've got a movie like Superman that looks like it's all popcorn and, gumdrops and happiness. And here's our hero, and our hero is going to fight the bad guys. Maybe things are changing.
And we'll see it flip again.
Maybe things are changing. It will.
We are back at it 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Hope you'll join us. Hot Mic Cutting with Row right here at outkick.com.